Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through the burnished halls of Mount Olympus, not with thunder or fanfare, but with the careful tread of someone who knows how to keep secrets. You're here to witness a god not known for his flash or fury, but for his fire. And trust me, it burns deep. Around you, the twilight glows a little too gold. Not natural gold, Hephaestus gold. The kind that hums faintly, warm as breath, forged in volcanoes and cooled in the rivers of Styx. You run your fingers along the edge of a wall that looks like polished obsidian, but it ripples like water under your touch. Somewhere far above, the other gods are arguing about wine and war and who's most beautiful this week. And meanwhile, down here, the god they all forgot is sketching blueprints with a knowing smile. Tonight, you're stepping into a story of clever vengeance, a slow-burn, metal-sharp prank that turned the king of the gods into a very shiny punchline. One no thunderbolt could undo. Oh, and, small detail, you probably won't survive this if Zeus finds out you're watching. But that's half the fun, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't start with Hephaestus. Not exactly. You start in the hush between storms, where no one's throwing lightning yet, but the clouds are bruising at the edges. Olympus looks perfect at first glance. Gilded columns, amphorae full of ambrosia, gods lounging like influencers on an eternal vacation. But beneath it, resentments, rivalries, schemes wrapped in silk. Hephaestus isn't the kind of god you notice in a crowd. He doesn't radiate beauty like Aphrodite or bellow like Poseidon. His gait's uneven, his beard a bit soot-dusted, and there's usually a smudge of something flammable on his tunic. But if you look closely, closer than most gods dare, there's a glint in his eye that's sharper than any blade he's ever forged. Tonight, you catch him alone. Not sulking, not bitter, but focused. He moves through his forge with practiced grace, even with that limp, checking pressure valves on a contraption that looks like it could either make pastries or obliterate small kingdoms. It's hard to tell. You're surrounded by his creations, mechanical birds that twitch on golden perches, cogs whispering secrets to each other, a bronze bull slowly chewing on a glowing piece of coal. This is where myths are built, quietly, and with the precision of someone who's been ignored long enough to become unstoppable. Here's the thing, Hephaestus wasn't born in fire. He was born into it. Born to Hera alone, depending on the version. Some say she made him without Zeus out of spite. That fact alone. Historians still argue whether it was defiance or desperation that led her to do that. And you know how well spite children tend to be treated in families. He didn't cry thunder. He didn't glow. He was, by divine standards, imperfect. A bad start. Hera, goddess of marriage and peacocks and questionable parenting decisions, took one look at her baby boy and flung him from Olympus like a disappointing salad. Down, down, down through the clouds and sea foam, until he crash-landed on Earth, breaking bones and reputation in equal measure. That was round one. Round two came later, after Hephaestus proved he could create anything. Jewels that shimmered with living starlight. Necklaces that told time. Thrones that whispered your enemy's secrets. The gods begged for his work, but forgot the maker. Except when he limped into a banquet and everyone chuckled behind their goblets. So he built Hera a throne. A beautiful, high-backed seat that shimmered like spun sunlight. She loved it, until she sat down. Then it snapped shut. Elegant. Impossibly strong. A trap disguised as a gift. She couldn't stand, couldn't shift, couldn't even breathe without the throne adjusting itself, humming gently like it was enjoying her discomfort. The gods pleaded with Hephaestus. Come back, release your mother, we'll give you whatever you want. But the blacksmith wasn't in a hurry. He'd been listening for years. And now they were listening to him. Eventually, Dionysus had to get him drunk and carry him home like a half-conscious trophy. Even now, the wine god still brags about it. But that's not the prank we're here for. No, tonight's prank, tonight's golden revenge, is the one he pulled on Zeus, the king of Olympus, the thunder hurler, the serial dater of mortals, demigods, clouds, swans, you name it. Zeus wasn't just powerful, he knew he was powerful. And when someone like that knows you're beneath him, that's where the danger lies. Hephaestus didn't get revenge with storms. He got it with silence. You trail him now through corridors of his forge, where molten light oozes from the walls and the air smells like steel and honey. He's drawing plans. Not for a weapon, exactly. Not for a throne. This time, it's something else. A gift. A chair. Gold, of course. The kind that breathes a little when no one's looking. Its arms are sculpted to perfection, molded to match Zeus's own. The back has carvings of eagles, thunderbolts, and flattering myth scenes where Zeus looks especially heroic. It's over the top. It's bait. Hephaestus knows the trick isn't building a trap. It's making sure the prey wants to step in. And the best traps, they flatter first. You can almost hear Hephaestus humming, something low and rhythmic, keeping time with the sparks leaping off his hammer. There's no rush, no rage, just precision. Each gear he slips into place tells a story. Each hinge he oils is an echo of every sneer and slight and whispered insult he swallowed. Here's the quirky part. Some late versions of the myth suggest he wove a riddle into the chair, one that only he could solve. A kind of divine crossword made of metal. Whether that's true or not. Historians still argue whether the riddle existed or if it was added later by poets who wanted to romanticize the prank. But it feels like something Hephaestus would do, doesn't it? Days pass. The chair is finished. It glows like ambition. Hephaestus doesn't present it himself. That would be too direct, too needy. Instead, one of his automaton servants, a golden boy with hummingbird wings and a polite voice, delivers it to Olympus like a UPS package from the underworld. Zeus is flattered. Of course he is. The chair is magnificent. He laughs as he settles into it, admiring how the armrests adjust to his biceps. He even comments, loudly, on how Hephaestus is finally learning to show proper respect. And then, slowly, the chair tightens. Just a little. At first, Zeus thinks it's a massage function. You know, that modern touch. But the grip doesn't stop. The cushions rise around his shoulders. The seat lowers a notch. The golden vines etched into the legs begin to move. And the great king of the gods realizes he can't stand up. You're standing nearby. You try not to laugh. You fail. Because there he is, Zeus the mighty, perched like a squawking toddler in a chair that has opinions. His lightning bolt slips from his hand and rolls away like a marble. He shouts. The chair hums. No one quite knows what to do. And Hephaestus? He's already gone. Back in his forge. Brewing tea. The real prank hasn't even started yet. Olympus doesn't handle humiliation well. Especially not Zeus's humiliation. Word spreads fast. The servants whisper it behind their hands. The other gods try to act casual, like they're not absolutely delighted. But come on. Poseidon strolls by just to check on things, chuckling into his beard. Apollo composes a limerick. Hermes starts taking bets on how long Zeus will stay stuck. Even Hera stops by to sip nectar a few feet away and pretend she doesn't know exactly how the chair works. You, meanwhile, are watching from the shadows of a column, right on the edge of divine comedy and cosmic disaster. Because Zeus's voice is changing. At first, it was loud and amused. Then confused. Then angry. Now he's making promises. If I ever get out of this chair, Hephaestus is going to wish he'd never been born. Classic Zeus. The kind of threat that echoes even when it's hollow. But here's the thing, Hephaestus knew he'd say that. He knew exactly how this would play out. You don't prank a god like Zeus unless you've already mapped the outcome. 5 steps ahead, pressure tested in bronze. This wasn't an impulse. It was art. And every second Zeus struggles just proves how flawlessly it's working. Now let's rewind just a little. Back to the why. Most versions of the myth tell us Hephaestus got his revenge for being thrown off Olympus, or for being mocked, or for being used. All valid, obviously, but if you lean in close, if you listen to the tone behind the tale, there's something else. Respect. Hephaestus wasn't out for blood. He was out for acknowledgement. He wanted to remind the gods that brilliance doesn't always come in the shape they expect. That you don't have to be loud or beautiful to be dangerous. You just have to be clever. But even gods have limits. The longer Zeus stays stuck, the tenser things get. The clouds over Olympus darken. Thunder rumbles low like a growl. Mortals are getting nervous. There are reports of sudden droughts, crop failures, temples struck by lightning. Petty, right? But very on brand. The gods convene. It's time for a meeting. Now, you might think, why not just break the chair? But divine objects don't work that way. This isn't IKEA. You can't unscrew a curse forged by the god of the forge himself. The chair is sealed with riddles, bound with intention. It doesn't obey brute force. Only the maker holds the key. So, once again, they need Hephaestus. Except there's a problem. He won't come. You see him now, back in his forge, calm as ever. He's sanding the wing of a mechanical swan, his hands steady, his expression unreadable. Messages arrive, scrolls inked in desperation, envoys stammering apologies. He doesn't even look up. The gods argue over who should go. No one wants to go. Except Dionysus. Of course Dionysus. The god of wine, madness, and elaborate solutions strolls in, wearing leopard print robes and sipping something fizzy. He says he's always liked Hephaestus. Says he throws the best after parties. Says he's got this. And maybe, just maybe, he does. Cut to the edge of Olympus, where the wine god finds the forge. They sit. They drink. Dionysus tells a few jokes. Hephaestus raises an eyebrow but doesn't smile. Dionysus plays the long game. He listens. No lectures. No begging. Just wine, warmth, and the occasional joke about Zeus wetting himself in terror. Eventually, Hephaestus sighs. It's not forgiveness. It's not surrender. It's strategy, and maybe, deep down, it's also amusement. So, he returns. You follow behind him, not too close. His gait is still uneven, but every step is full of intent. He enters the court of Olympus like a silent storm. No fanfare, no drum roll, just the sound of bronze sandals on marble. The other gods part like mist. Zeus, red-faced and seething, locks eyes with him. Hephaestus says nothing. He walks up to the throne, places one hand on the golden mechanism, and whispers something you can't quite hear. Something old and strange, in the tongue of anvils and ash. The chair sighs, clicks, opens. Zeus stumbles out like a marionette whose strings just snapped. No thanks. No apology. Just a glare that could boil oceans. And Hephaestus? He turns and walks away. He doesn't wait for applause. He doesn't need it. His point is made. His silence speaks louder than thunder. Because sometimes, the quiet gods, gods of the forge and the flame, the discarded and the disrespected, are the ones who reshape the heavens, and sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's gold-plated and inescapable. The thing about Olympus is, it remembers. It's a realm of eternal beings, so nothing truly fades. Every slight, every prank, every whispered joke at a feast clings like smoke in silk robes. And now, after the golden chair incident, you notice a shift. The air carries tension, like the pause before a lyre string snaps. You walk through Olympus and feel the sideways glances. No one mentions it outright, but they're all thinking the same thing. What will Zeus do now? Because the king of the gods doesn't forget humiliation. He files it away like a bad debt. And Hephaestus? He may have won that round, but he's still vulnerable. Even gods have pressure points. You trail behind Hephaestus as he returns to his forge, now a figure cloaked in quiet victory. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't celebrate. He just returns to the hiss of steam, the rasp of metal, and the rhythm of a hammer that's older than mountains. If you didn't know better, you'd think the entire Golden Throne incident never happened. But you do know better. And so does Zeus. Hephaestus's forge isn't on Olympus proper, remember, it's tucked into the fiery belly of a volcano, perched between the mortal and immortal realms. The air smells like lava and lightning. The walls breathe heat. Here, he creates wonders. Weapons that shape wars, automatons that laugh and cry, filigreed creatures that would make Da Vinci weep into his sketchbook. But now, he's working on something different. Not a trap. Not a throne. Something subtler. Something meant for Zeus, but not against Zeus. See, Hephaestus isn't stupid. He knows another public humiliation might push Olympus into chaos. Even his brilliance won't protect him forever. But what if, instead of challenging Zeus, he could nudge him? What if he could plant an idea so clever, so carefully wrapped in flattery and marvel, that Zeus would walk straight into it and smile? And that's when the next prank begins. Not a trap this time. A gift. Because everyone knows Zeus loves gifts. He accepts them the way influencers accept PR boxes. Dramatic unboxings. Zero gratitude. But still, gifts are a sacred language among gods. And no one speaks it better than Hephaestus. He begins crafting. This time, it's not about locking Zeus down. It's about lifting him up, and then letting him fall. You watch him begin with a sliver of celestial gold, so pure, it hums when touched. He draws ancient schematics in charcoal, concentric circles, interlocking glyphs, something that looks like a harp and a bird fused together. There's laughter in his shoulders, a gleam behind his tired eyes. The piece begins to take shape, a golden orb about the size of a pomegranate, with a hollow core and swirling etchings along its shell. To any other god, it might look ornamental, but to Hephaestus, it's layered in mischief. The orb reacts to praise. Whenever someone says Zeus's name in admiration, the orb glows, and glows, and glows, until it bursts into light so blinding, even gods must look away. A divinely triggered ego bomb. And the best part, it's calibrated. It builds slowly. The more Zeus basks in admiration, the more unstable it becomes. But never dangerous. Hephaestus isn't trying to hurt him. Just remind him of limits, of humility, of who really makes Olympus run. Still, the prank needs more than clever engineering. It needs packaging. So Hephaestus wraps the orb inside a sculpture, a towering golden eagle with outstretched wings, symbolic of Zeus's reign. He binds it in a box made of obsidian and pearl. He inscribes a note, etched in shimmering silver. To the greatest among us, may your glory shine eternally. Flattery. Because nothing disarms like praise. Now, you're probably thinking, surely Zeus isn't that easy to fool. But here's the thing, he wants to believe. He wants to believe Olympus still reveres him without question. He wants to believe his power is unshakable. He wants a win after the throne debacle. So when Hermes delivers the gift, blinking, awkward, hoping not to be vaporized, Zeus doesn't hesitate. He beams. He doesn't ask why Hephaestus sent it. He doesn't sniff for traps. He just waves it in front of everyone at dinner like a toddler with a shiny rock. See this? He booms. Asterisk, this asterisk is loyalty. Everyone claps. Mostly out of fear. Except Hera. She raises one eyebrow, sips her nectar, and mutters something under her breath that sounds suspiciously like, "Oh no, not again." And the orb works. At first, the glow is gentle, warm, subtle enough that no one notices. But the gods do keep praising Zeus. He encourages it, after all. Poseidon offers a toast. Athena compliments his judgment. Dionysus, slightly drunk, starts an impromptu ode about his stormy magnificence. The eagle glows. and glows, and glows. Within days, the light becomes so blinding that servants wear veils. Apollo complains that it's interfering with his sun routes. Artemis swears it scared her hounds. Zeus, of course, thinks it's hilarious. This is what happens when you're adored, he tells Ares, who just grunts. But admiration has a half-life. And it turns out even gods get tired of squinting. Eventually, someone snaps. It's Demeter. She storms into the hall during breakfast, hurls a bundle of burnt barley at the orb, and declares, "Either that thing goes, or I do." Zeus, blinking through golden tears, turns to Hephaestus. "Is this supposed to do that?" Hephaestus shrugs. "It's divine feedback. Just showing you your influence." There's a pause. A very long pause. Then, to everyone's shock, Zeus laughs. A deep, genuine belly laugh. Because here's the thing, sometimes even kings enjoy a joke at their own expense. Asterisk if asterisk it's brilliant enough. Hephaestus never smirks. Never bows. Just picks up his hammer and walks away. But you can tell, as he disappears into the forge once more, that this time, he's pleased. Not because he fooled Zeus, but because Zeus let himself be fooled. And that, dear listener, is the real mark of success. Not fear. Not flattery. But a prank so well made, even the punchline feels like praise. You've seen it before. Power recoils from the faintest bruise. Zeus may have laughed, yes, but that sound was brittle under the thunder. After the golden orb's luminous prank faded and Olympus returned to its normal glimmer, something darker stirred behind the king's lightning gaze. You spot it in the little things. The way he drums his fingers on cloudstone whenever someone mentions Hephaestus. The way his eagle circles lower, more watchful than before. He's not angry. He's plotting. Now here's the thing. Zeus isn't clever in the way Hephaestus is. He's not a maker. He's a wielder. His power is direct, blunt force wind, skyfire, overwhelming presence. But even blunt gods can scheme, if they feel mocked enough. And Zeus definitely feels mocked. You're standing in the bronze-walled corridors of Olympus's lesser hall, where divine business gets handled away from ambrosia feasts and gossipy nymphs. Here, you find Zeus pacing, alone. No council, no Hera, no grumbling Poseidon. Just the king of the gods, muttering under his breath about dented pride and golden peacocks. He's talking to himself, but not only to himself. Because even the gods keep secrets inside secrets. And behind the silver columns, hidden by illusion, is a thing most Olympians pretend not to know about, the shadow archivist. The archivist isn't a god. Not in the regular sense. They're a leftover, one of the weird, stitched-up relics from the world before Olympus. Technically immortal. Definitely unsettling. They live in the gaps between reality, and Zeus occasionally consults them the way a CEO might consult a very shady accountant. "Tell me something he fears," Zeus says, teeth gritted. "Tell me something Hephaestus hates." The archivist, speaking in a voice like old paper catching fire, offers a single name. Eurynomy. And now you're blinking. Because who? Exactly. See, Eurynomy is a name buried under centuries of godly rebranding. But long ago, long asterisk before the modern pantheon locked into place, she was more than a memory. She was an Oceanid, a Titaness, a goddess of flow and movement. According to some versions, she even raised Hephaestus for a time after he was flung from Olympus. That's right. When Zeus tossed baby Hephaestus off the mountain for being unsightly, historians still argue whether that meant deformed, cursed, or just not sufficiently photogenic. It was Eurynomy who caught him. She and Thetis, the sea nymph, brought him into a hidden underwater grotto, raised him, sheltered him, nurtured his gift for metalwork far from Olympian judgment. It's where he learned to shape coral into armor and lightning glass into mirrors, where he learned to trust. So of course, Eurynomy is a wound. She's also missing, vanished eons ago in one of the lesser god wars, unrecorded by poets. But you can tell it still haunts him. Hephaestus never talks about it. never mentions her, never thanks her in his toasts. But you watch his eyes flicker whenever sea foam brushes too close to his forge. And Zeus? Zeus sees that flicker. So he calls in favors. He speaks to the deep sea titans, the ones who only speak in bubbles and tectonic shifts. He consults the fates, who shrug and say, "She's not on the loom." And finally, with a touch of thunder in his voice, he commands Apollo to scour the cosmos for her trace. And Apollo, golden, smug, entirely too invested, finds something. It's a memory, half cracked. An old piece of Eurynomy's hairpin, lodged in a tree on the edge of Tartarus, where the world bends sideways. Wrapped around it, a shimmer of her voice. Nothing whole, just a sound. "Little flame, remember your center." It's what she used to say to him when his inventions exploded in the cave. When he cried molten tears. When he thought Olympus had forgotten him forever. And now Zeus has it. And what does he do? He gifts it. Wrapped in another eagle-shaped box, gilded in promises, he has it delivered to Hephaestus's forge with a single message. "Even the past remembers you. Don't let it be forgotten." Now that's cruel. Because it's not a trap. Not technically. It's not a throne that locks, or an ego orb that blinds. It's just a reminder. A memory, weaponized. Hephaestus doesn't open it right away. He stares at it for hours. You see the storm behind his calm. The way he tightens the straps on his apron. The way he snaps a gear wheel in two without realizing it. And when he does open it, when that soft, remembered voice spills out, you watch him stagger. He almost breaks, but almost is not quite. And so, Hephaestus picks up his tools again. Not in rage. Not in vengeance. In resolve. He's going to prank Zeus again. Not for pride. Not for revenge. But to prove something important. That you can survive being discarded. That you can take pain, old, oceanic, formative pain, and turn it into craft. This time, he starts with a mirror. Not a mortal mirror. Not even a divine one. A mirror forged from time glass, which only the oldest titans remember how to mine. A mirror that doesn't show reflections. It shows versions. He carves it into a pendant, small and innocuous, and binds it with threads made from Prometheus's leftover fire. It's subtle, slippery, the kind of gift that gets passed hand to hand without notice, until it lands exactly where he wants it. In Zeus's palm, wrapped in casual friendship. No threats, no titles, just a quiet note, scratched in iron. Wear it only if you can handle the truth. And Zeus? Of course he wears it. Because what's a pendant from Hephaestus if not another compliment? At first, nothing happens. 4 days, maybe weeks. But then, one night, under the stars with Hera half asleep beside him, Zeus peers into the pendant and sees, not himself, not his throne, but a world where he never ruled. Where Hades holds the sky, where Athena leads Olympus, where Hephaestus was never thrown, a world where the gods chose differently, and it shakes him. Because the truth is, even the king of gods wonders sometimes whether his reign was fate or a fluke. He rips the pendant off, demands Hephaestus to explain it. But Hephaestus only shrugs. "Just a possibility," he says. "You asked for the truth." And once again, you realize something subtle. Hephaestus isn't just pranking. He's teaching. Every joke is a lesson. Every jab is a chisel tap against Olympus's fragile marble ego. And Zeus, whether he likes it or not, is learning. One glowing orb, one shimmering pendant, one uncomfortable truth at a time. By now, you're learning to track Hephaestus the way a cat watches raindrops on glass. Still, quiet, calculating, and under all that stillness, motion. Not just mechanical tinkering or bronze-wrought gadgets. No, this is subtler, deeper. He's beginning to understand that power doesn't just come from strength or status. It comes from narrative, Whoever controls the story shapes the world. And right now, Zeus still thinks he controls the story. So Hephaestus begins to tinker with that. Not with war, not with rebellion, but with optics. He starts with a rumor. A tiny one. Something about a certain celestial chariot in need of redesign. A whisper that the sun's movement could be smoother, more efficient, more beautiful. You hear it drift from a passing satyr to a winged courier, then to the marble halls of Apollo's temple. Just a whisper. Apollo, of course, bites. Redesign my chariot, he says, half offended and half intrigued. What's wrong with my chariot? Hephaestus, ever so mildly, replies, oh, nothing. It's just functional. Functional. The divine equivalent of calling your crush's poetry nice. Apollo insists on a demonstration. And so Hephaestus, in front of a crowd that includes not just Apollo but Athena, Hermes, Demeter, and, yes, Zeus, unveils the Helios frame. It's sleek, radiant, curved like sunlight wrapped in gravity. You can hear it hum with solar resonance. It doesn't just move, it glides. It whispers to the cosmos, I am inevitable. The gods are stunned. Apollo is furious but secretly aroused. And Zeus? Zeus watches, arms crossed, jaw tight. Because this wasn't just an upgrade. It was a statement. Hephaestus, the lame god, just made light faster. And everyone saw it. Now, before we go further, you should know, historians still argue whether this moment actually altered the sun's path or merely embarrassed Apollo into driving more gracefully. Some even say the sun glows differently now, a deeper gold since that day. Fringe theorists claim it altered time itself, but they've been exiled to islands where the clocks run backward, so take that as you will. Regardless, the shift is real. Hephaestus becomes cool. Not charming like Hermes. Not terrifying like Ares. But respected. Admired. Even mimicked. Young gods start forging their own gadgets. Hera starts wearing bronze-braided bangles. Artemis requests a moon-reflecting bow. Hephaestus becomes, in modern terms, a vibe. And Zeus hates it. Because Olympus is meant to orbit him, not some smoky forge god with a toolkit and a grudge. So, once again, the king schemes. This time, it's subtler. He arranges for a celebration of divine innovation. A pageant. An exhibition. The kind of pompous, glittering nonsense where nothing really happens except ego-feeding and wine-spilling. Hephaestus is invited, of course. But so is Daedalus. Yeah, that Daedalus. The mortal craftsman. The human legend. Architect of the labyrinth. Wax-winged father of Icarus. Icon of overambition. Still alive, barely, because certain mortals get favored by fate, and Daedalus is one of them. And Zeus, the sneaky bastard, knows this will rankle. Hephaestus pretends not to mind. Pretends it's an honor to stand beside Daedalus. Smiles politely when mortals gasp at the old man's clockwork owl. Claps gently as Daedalus unveils a self-balancing wine amphora. But later, alone, you watch him pick up a gear and crush it in his palm. Because it hurts. Not that Daedalus is brilliant. He is. It's that mortals are starting to believe they invented mechanics. They're forgetting where it all came from. They're forgetting him. That's when Hephaestus gets an idea. Not revenge. Not sabotage. A reminder. You see, mortals have always struggled with divine attribution. They like to believe they invented things. Fire, the wheel, democracy, Instagram filters. But the truth is, most of these gifts were handed down. Sometimes gently, sometimes stolen, and sometimes disguised as jokes. So Hephaestus decides it's time to leave a new gift. He builds it in secret, deep inside the volcano that houses his truest forge, the one not on Olympus but in the bones of the earth. No fanfare, no assistance, just him, sweat, and metal that sings when struck. He calls it the Echo Automaton, a bronze figure shaped like no god or mortal, tall, androgynous, faceless. Its chest glows with a soft pulse, like it's breathing. And its purpose? To mimic the voice of anyone who speaks to it. Not in simple parroting, but in eerie, flawless replication. Whisper to it, and it whispers back, down to tone and inflection. The twist. It whispers your voice to someone else. And someone else's voice to you. Now you see where this is going. Hephaestus plants the echo automaton at the edge of Daedalus' workshop. Not as a threat. Not even as a prank, technically. Just a helper. At first, Daedalus is charmed. He whispers secrets to the automaton. It whispers compliments in return. It begins to pass messages between the mortal genius and his late son's spirit. Or so it seems. But soon, it gets weird. He hears Icarus telling him to fly again. He hears Zeus telling him to betray Hephaestus. He hears himself confessing fears he never voiced aloud. And one day, Daedalus collapses in tears, begging the automaton to just shut up. That's when Zeus finally gets angry. Because now, mortals are getting caught in the crossfire of divine pettiness. That's not just embarrassing. It's dangerous. It attracts attention from outside Olympus. Titans glance up. Primordials shift in their dreams. Zeus confronts Hephaestus in the throne room. Hephaestus doesn't raise his voice. Doesn't flinch. Just says, mortals forget too easily. This one won't. You'd expect a thunderbolt. A bellow. Some dramatic declaration of divine wrath. But Zeus just nods. And leaves. He's realizing something dangerous. Hephaestus isn't just pranking him. He's educating everyone else. And that's worse. Because a laughing king is powerful. But a laughing audience? That's a threat. You wake into Olympus mid-glare. Zeus is brooding. Not his theatrical storm cloud tantrum. No, this is that quiet, smoldering kind of brooding. The kind where the whole palace holds its breath. Even the columns. The kind that tells you the prank has landed. It didn't just sting, it humiliated. And Hephaestus? He's still in the forge. Still working. Still not saying a word. But you can feel it now. A shift in the air. The gods aren't laughing anymore. They're watching. Because something has changed since the echo automaton. Not just in Olympus, but everywhere. Mortals are scared of the dark again. Not because of monsters. Because of voices. Voices that sound like theirs, whispering things they never said. Paranoia spreads like fog through temples and taverns. Priests warn against speaking alone. Oracles refuse to work unless blindfolded. And the gods. They start wondering if their words are safe. If secrets can still be whispered in Olympus without echoing back in unexpected ears. The prank wasn't just clever, it was strategic. It placed Hephaestus at the center of a new kind of power. Control of communication. The first viral message. The first deepfake. Before we go further, yes, this one really drives historians up the wall. Some claim the echo automaton was simply mythic metaphor. Others say it was a warning about voice theft or oracular manipulation. A few fringe academics think it was the blueprint for Hermes' later invention of the whisper network, which, apparently, still exists today. But no one agrees on how much truth there was behind that bronze mimic. But you're here now. You hear the truth humming in the forge. See, Hephaestus isn't done. He's discovered something delightful about silence. It lets you control when people listen. The quieter he gets, the more Olympus leans in. And he's about to reward that curiosity with his most delicate trap yet. Not a machine. Not a weapon. A chair. Yeah, you heard me. A golden throne so beautiful it physically hurts to look at. Crafted from sun-hardened or drawn from the river Lethe itself. Metal soaked in forgetfulness, memoryless and flawless. It catches the light in ways that defy geometry. It doesn't reflect, it absorbs, as if every eye is pulled into its orbit. He doesn't present it with fanfare. He just wheels it into the grand hall during one of Zeus's lesser banquets. Sets it down. Walks away. That's all. Now, you know Zeus. You know that subtlety and restraint are not his strong suits. A shiny new throne appears in his hall, unattended. Of course he sits on it. And, oh, it's comfortable. Unreal, even. He sighs. Reclines. Leans back like he's about to drop into REM sleep. Then he tries to stand. He can't. The throne has him. It doesn't grab. Doesn't trap in any dramatic chain and shackle way. It just refuses to let go. As if the gold has become one with his divine skin, melded at some molecular, mythic level. And the harder he struggles, the more it hurts. Not physically. Pride. He can't not look ridiculous. Poseidon notices first. Raises an eyebrow. Hermes giggles. Ares says something unhelpful. And then the laughter spreads. Zeus tries to thunder, to rage, to assert his dominance. But the image of the king of gods squirming in a chair like a toddler who wet himself? It's too powerful. Too perfect. And Hephaestus? He's nowhere to be seen. That's the worst part. Because everyone knows he did it. But he doesn't show up to claim it. Doesn't gloat. No gotcha, no victory lap. Just absence. That absence haunts Zeus. Eventually, he calls a council. Not a minor one, a full assembly. Every god summoned. Even Hades is dragged up from the underworld. The throne is still stuck to Zeus's, but by the way, so he chairs the meeting while being the chair. Hephaestus is summoned, but he refuses. Hera volunteers to fetch him. He says nothing. Hermes tries. Nope. So finally, in a fit of petty desperation, they send Dionysus. And this is where things get delicious. Because Dionysus, the wild god, the wine boy, the eternal party, is the only one Hephaestus listens to. Why? No one knows. Maybe because Dionysus never once mocked his limp. Maybe because he once poured wine on a molten mold and called it performance art. Maybe because they both understand what it's like to be seen as lesser gods. Whatever the reason, Dionysus saunters into the forge. No message. No command. Just vibes. Hephaestus looks up. Says one word. Wine. And Dionysus grins. That night, Olympus holds its breath. And the next morning, Hephaestus arrives at the grand hall. No tools. No hammer. No entourage. Just a goblet. He walks up to Zeus. The king glares at him. Hephaestus raises the goblet. Drink. Zeus hesitates. Hephaestus shrugs. Starts to leave. Zeus growls. Takes the goblet. Drinks. The moment the wine hits his tongue, the throne releases. Not with a snap or a pop. Just, let's go. Like it was never holding him in the first place. Zeus falls on the marble floor, dignity scattered like marbles. And the whole hall erupts. Because that was a show. Hephaestus bows. Not to Zeus. To the crowd. And they cheer. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was theater. It was art. Hephaestus didn't just trap Zeus. He made everyone else feel powerful watching it happen. And Zeus knows it. You can see it in his face. The king has been turned into content. But he can't punish Hephaestus. Not without looking worse. And that's the genius of it. This golden prank, this absurd throne, it did what no war, no rebellion, no insult ever could. It turned the god of thunder into a punchline, and the god of fire into a legend. You wake to the scent of metal mixed with something unfamiliar, jasmine, maybe. The forge's usual aroma, heavy with charcoal and iron filings, has softened. The air feels richer, more intentional. There's something different in how the space breathes. You don't notice it at first. After all, Hephaestus has always been methodical, but as you step deeper into the labyrinth of bronze limbs and steaming gears, you sense it. The forge has fallen silent, not in idleness but in concentration. The quiet isn't the absence of sound, it's a coiled presence. Like something just beneath the surface is listening. After the throne prank, Hephaestus did not celebrate. There were no boasts, no smug monologues, no dramatic exits. Just a simple return to the forge, as though he'd only taken a quick break to stretch his legs. Olympus, on the other hand, has not been quite the same. The prank sent a crack through the marble calm of the god's court. Nobody talks about it aloud, but everyone remembers the way Zeus had flailed, red-faced and impotent, in a chair made by the very sun he had once flung from the heavens. They remember how the other gods laughed, and then stopped when Hephaestus didn't. For a while, the others avoid the forge. Some out of embarrassment, others from unease. Eventually, though, they begin drifting back, one by one. Not because they forgive or forget, but because they remember something else. Hephaestus builds things they can't live without. Divine weapons. Self-maintaining palaces. Gadgets that can track secrets, stir winds, light temples without flame. In Olympus, power isn't just strength, it's craftsmanship, and Hephaestus is its master. Now they're polite. They shuffle in with careful words and softened tones, couched requests that almost sound like flattery. Hermes asks if Hephaestus might create sandals that don't scuff divine marble. Athena wonders if he's ever thought about forging an anti-blink helmet for sharper strategy in combat. Even Apollo, who rarely needs help from anyone, offers a too-casual request for a lyre that can harmonize with silence. The forge becomes a kind of shrine, not just of fire and function, but of divine diplomacy. Hephaestus entertains their requests, nodding, noting, occasionally gesturing to a workbench. He fulfills some, leaves others half-formed. But there's a focus now, sharper than before. His hammer strikes with a more deliberate rhythm. His assistants, those copper-clad automatons with softly whirring joints, have increased in number, and they move like dancers inside a precise choreography only Hephaestus understands. You feel as though you're standing in the middle of a machine brain, alive and dreaming. And then you see her. Not Pandora, not yet. But someone close. A figure sitting upright on a stone slab near the forge's heart. She's made of bronze and ivory, her joints fluid, her face serene. She isn't alive, not quite, but she holds the presence of something that knows it's being watched. Her arms are outstretched, palms open, as though in invitation or interrogation. You can't tell whether she's asking a question or daring you to ask one. This is one of Hephaestus's earliest prototypes. A forerunner of the perfect woman myth that would later culminate in Pandora. But unlike the version the poets tell, this one isn't about punishment or beauty. She's an experiment, a test, a mirror. The old myths gloss over this phase. They leap from the forge to the fable, from the idea of a woman crafted by divine hands to the calamity she unleashed. But what they miss, deliberately or out of discomfort, is that Hephaestus didn't just build one woman. He built dozens, perhaps hundreds, each one different, each one a refinement. These were not lifeless statues, they were questions given shape. Puzzles in metal and clay, machines that breathed poetry and asked philosophical riddles while sharpening knives behind their backs. The gods never quite knew what to do with them. One sang lullabies that predicted storms. Another tracked time by blinking Morse code in patterns no one could decipher. One, reportedly, spent its entire existence whispering the names of mortals destined to betray their lovers. The prototypes weren't mistakes, they were warning shots. Hephaestus was mapping something, shaping the divine equivalent of artificial intelligence. Not machines that mimicked life, but constructs that questioned it. You pass another prototype, this one missing her arms. Her chest cavity is open, gears visible, ticking with a rhythm unsettlingly close to a heartbeat. Her face is more abstract, no real features, just smooth curves suggesting expression. You imagine her waking, not to obey, but to watch, to study, to remember. Hephaestus didn't give his creations orders. He gave them observational autonomy, a concept you realize doesn't belong in Olympus at all. Because the gods prefer worshippers, not witnesses. And yet, Here's the fringe theory of the night. Some scholars suggest these women, these early automata, were actually embedded surveillance units. That through them, Hephaestus learned what the gods feared most. Not war, not rebellion, but reflection. He was, in essence, building a divine echo chamber where their whispers were preserved and replayed in gold and oil. There's even a record from an obscure Orphic hymn, so brief it's often dismissed as metaphor, that describes maidens of brass who weep the sins of their makers. Most historians ignore it, but a few believe it's a veiled reference to these prototypes. The idea being that Hephaestus's creations could absorb divine behavior and react, not mechanically, but emotionally. A mirror with feeling. A feedback loop of discomfort. Athena visits the forge again, this time stepping all the way inside. Her presence is quiet, but charged. She doesn't speak, just studies the newest prototype. Her owl lands on its shoulder, hoots once, and flutters away, unsettled. Athena's expression doesn't change, but her knuckles whiten on her spear shaft. You catch a flicker of thought in her gaze. This is not a weapon we can control. Hephaestus doesn't acknowledge her. He's brushing copper dust across the lids of another unfinished statue. His movements are slow, almost reverent. This act, giving eyes, is sacred. Ancient sculptors knew this. The moment a statue receives eyes, it crosses from object to presence. It's why many ancient statues remained eyeless until consecration, because to look into its gaze too early was to risk seeing yourself in ways you weren't ready for. This one receives the full treatment. Iris, pupil, that eerie wet gleam of artificial tear ducts. The moment the eyes are complete, the air in the forge tightens. Something clicks behind the bronze skull. Not a loud sound, just a confirmation. The body does not move, but it understands. Hephaestus finishes his work, then steps away, not like an inventor admiring his creation, but like a strategist confirming the placement of his final piece. Back at the Olympian dining hall, Dionysus sips from a gold-handled goblet, his usual grin absent. He watches the entryway like he's expecting something, and when Hephaestus finally appears, not dragged, not summoned, just calmly walking in and sitting next to him, the entire hall leans a little closer without meaning to. Hephaestus doesn't speak. He lifts a cup, drinks, and the gods, who laugh easily, who quarrel loudly, who pretend nothing ever touches them, go very quiet. Because nobody knows what he just finished building. But everyone knows, it changed the rules. By the time you return to the forge again, it's been transformed. Not in structure, its bones remain the same, its ceilings high and braced with bronze ribs, but in atmosphere. It no longer hums like a workshop. It purrs like a secret. The air is slower, thicker, woven through with something close to anticipation. You walk softer without meaning to. Even your breath changes rhythm, sinking to something older than fire. At the heart of it, Hephaestus stands as always. But there's a new table beside him, stone not metal, and resting on it is a single sealed jar. Not a box. Not a chest. A jar, tall and elegant, carved from fine clay. Its surface glows faintly, like it remembers light even when none is present. Around its neck is a braided bronze cord, wrapped thrice and sealed with a pin shaped like an eye. This is the object that will outlive everyone. We call it Pandora's box now, but in the oldest versions, especially the Hesiodic ones, it was unmistakably a jar, or pithos. The kind used to store oil, wine, or grain. Something meant to preserve life, not end it. That's what makes it so chilling. Because a box suggests deliberate containment. A jar, though. A jar belongs in the home. On the table. Within reach. Something that opens easily. Something meant to be opened. But you don't approach it yet. First, you study the woman standing beside it. Pandora. She is not bronze. She is not ivory. She is not one of the forerunners left half awake in a corner, blinking in code or humming riddles. She is flesh. She breathes. She blinks. Her hair curls at the temple in a way no sculpture can mimic. The air around her does not buzz with mechanical life. It bends toward her, as it does around people whose existence disturbs the laws of their own world. And she is smiling. Not the dopey, passive grin of a cartoon Eve, nor the seductive half-smirk some artists give her. This smile is different. It is layered. It knows things. She is looking at you, and it feels like she's already forgiven you for something you haven't done yet. Here's the strange part. In the oldest Greek texts, Pandora is not portrayed as evil. She is not a trickster. She is not even aware of what she carries. She is called Kalin Kakin, a beautiful evil, but not because she is malicious. It's because she exists at the edge of contradiction. A gift that is also a punishment. A creation that is also a curse. A woman, in the eyes of Olympus, who was never meant to choose her own story. You watch her move now, deliberate, human, but too composed to be naive. The gods gave her all their gifts. That's what her name means. Pan, all, and Doran, gift. Beauty from Aphrodite. Wisdom from Athena. Speech from Hermes. A voice like wind chimes, a posture that could sway kings. But what they also gave her, quietly, was obedience. She was designed not to lead, but to be led. Not to speak first, but to respond. Not to defy, but to exist. And yet, Hephaestus looks at her the way a writer looks at a pen that might betray them. He was not the architect of her soul, only her frame. The gods dictated the rest. She is their project now, their experiment, a vessel for divine contradiction. And she is aware of it, even if she doesn't fully understand it. You see it in her stance. She carries herself like a person inside a blueprint. The jar is meant to go to Earth. That much is known. Zeus's petty revenge scheme is already in motion. He's furious that Prometheus gave fire to mankind. That sacred theft ruined the balance of dependency. Mortals now hold the divine spark. And Zeus, never one to let disobedience go unpunished, has orchestrated a new kind of weapon. Not war, not drought, but disruption. So he sends a gift. A woman. A jar. A choice. The myths often frame it as simple. Pandora opened the jar out of curiosity. But there is no moment in the texts where she is tricked into it. No one presses her hand. She acts. She chooses. And that's what makes this story terrifying to the gods. Because choice, once introduced, spreads. When Pandora opens the jar, what escapes isn't just evil. It's everything. Sickness, lies, war, despair, aging. Abstract horrors with sharp teeth. Concepts that hadn't existed yet. Ideas with consequences. Some myths even describe them not as vapors, but as winged spirits, *kakoi*, that took form and scattered across the world like blown embers. You imagine them screaming as they leave the jar, not in pain, but in joy. Released from containment. Unleashed into a world unprepared for metaphor. The jar is not empty afterward. At the very bottom, a single thing remains. Elpis. Hope. You've probably heard that part before. It's printed in children's books, embroidered on Etsy pillows. But the truth is more complicated. Ancient scholars argued for centuries about what hope was doing in the jar at all. Was it a blessing left behind? A cruel trick meant to extend suffering? Or was it the ultimate gift? Proof that even after horror, something golden could remain? Some versions suggest hope never left the jar. That it is still sealed inside, hidden at the bottom of grief, waiting. Others say hope escaped just like the rest, but flies slower, takes longer to arrive, and always comes last. A kind of divine delay. But here's a theory you haven't heard. What if hope wasn't meant to be in the jar at all? What if Pandora, clever, cursed, curious Pandora, put it there herself? Think about it. She was forged by gods, gifted with grace and language and cunning. But she was also given obedience. So how do you rebel when you cannot fight? You slip something in. You smuggle resistance into the punishment. A woman sent to earth with a jar full of suffering, who sneaks in one final thing, the seed of recovery. Because while fear spreads fast, hope burrows deep. That's why, thousands of years later, we still say her name. Not in hatred, not in scorn, but in reference. We don't call it Zeus's jar, or Hephaestus's punishment. We call it Pandora's. Because the story, no matter how the gods framed it, became hers. She opened it. She faced it. And somehow, we're still here. Your fingers trace the warm stone of the forge as you drift back from the story of Pandora. The air still smells faintly of clay and rose oil, like something sacred passed through and left a trace. But Hephaestus isn't done. That jar. That woman. They were chess pieces, ingenious ones, yes, but only part of the larger checkmate he's been plotting all along. The real move is coming, and it won't be played on Earth. No. The trap Hephaestus is building now is forged for Olympus itself, and for one very specific occupant at the top. Zeus. You shift, the weight of his name almost comedic by now. Thunder-wielding, goat cheese-loving, affair-starting Zeus. He doesn't just rule Olympus, he micromanages it. Every gust of wind is his mood swing. Every lightning bolt is an opinion. You'd think that kind of cosmic narcissism would be exhausting, but no. Zeus thrives on it. He wraps himself in sky like a robe and calls it justice. And he's infuriatingly good at keeping control. That's the problem. Hephaestus knows this better than anyone. He's lived under Zeus's thumb since the beginning. It was Zeus who flung him off Olympus as a newborn. It was Zeus who gave him back his seat, conditionally, only after Hephaestus proved he could be useful. And it's Zeus who treats him like a tool, less of a god, more of a divine 3D printer with a limp. But you know better now. Hephaestus isn't a background character. He's been watching, calculating. He doesn't strike when provoked. He strikes when underestimated. And Zeus? Zeus has never once imagined Hephaestus could outsmart him. That's the fatal flaw. That's the gap in the armor. And that's where the plan begins. It starts not with a forge, but with an invitation. You don't see it written anywhere. No scroll, no messenger. But Hephaestus knows Zeus's patterns. The king of the gods has a weakness for ceremony, especially if it makes him look benevolent. So Hephaestus begins work on a gift. Not a weapon. Not a machine. A throne. A golden throne. He sculpts it in secret over many nights. Not because he's hiding. No, that would imply guilt. He does it quietly because artistry demands silence. And what he's making is not just furniture. It's architecture with a heartbeat. A puzzle in plain sight. You lean in as the throne takes shape. Its surface gleams like honey in torchlight, warm and deceptive. Vines of gold curl around the arms, shaped like laurel leaves. Inset gems, amber, not ruby, catch the light with a subtle glow. Nothing too flashy. Nothing that screams, trap. Just enough majesty to flatter the king's ego. Just enough craftsmanship to be irresistible. The mechanics are hidden underneath. Springs woven from celestial sinew. Hinges lubricated with nectar oil. At its heart, a locking mechanism so complex it doesn't click or snap. It hums. Like a harp string under tension, waiting for the first note. And the trigger. The moment someone sits down. Historians still argue whether the throne was purely mechanical or partially enchanted. Some say it was a feat of engineering so advanced it functioned like magic. Others believe Hephaestus layered divine runes into its base, using ancient metallurgy lost to time. Either way, the result was the same. Once seated, Zeus would not be able to rise. The throne would become a prison, elegant and inescapable. You smile a little. The poetic symmetry is delicious. Zeus, chained not with iron, but with his own vanity. But here's the truly brilliant part. Hephaestus doesn't deliver the throne himself. He sends it as a gift. A simple offering. A token of gratitude. He plays the role of the obedient craftsman, the grateful son. No flourish. No gloating. Just a bow and a box with a bow on top. And Zeus, predictably, eats it up. He installs the throne in his great hall, right at the center, where everyone can see. Olympus buzzes with admiration. Even Hera claps politely. They call it a masterpiece, a marvel, a symbol of divine unity. And then Zeus sits. At first, nothing happens. The seat is warm, comfortable, even. The armrests fit his frame exactly. He raises a goblet. He makes a toast. He thinks, for one brief, glorious moment, that all is well. Then he tries to stand. The throne tightens. Not painfully, not abruptly. It's more like the seat inhales. The armrests curl inward, holding his elbows in place. The vines on the backrest flatten against his spine like hands. His legs feel suddenly weighted, not by fatigue, but by precision. It is subtle, gentle, undeniable. Zeus is stuck, and Olympus falls silent. Now, you're probably expecting a thunderstorm, a tantrum, a scream that cracks the clouds. But no. Zeus's fury, in that first moment, is quiet, embarrassed. He tugs. He shifts. He pretends he's just resting longer than usual. The other gods look at each other, unsure whether to laugh or bow. But as the minutes stretch into hours, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The king of the gods cannot move. And Hephaestus? He's nowhere to be found. It's not clear how long he waits. Some say days. Some say he lets Zeus marinate in his humiliation for nearly a week. Either way, he refuses every summons. Hermes is sent to retrieve him, but returns empty-handed, mumbling something about divine creative boundaries. Ares volunteers to break the throne open, but even his brute strength can't pry it loose. Eventually, the gods realize they need Hephaestus, not just his tools. Only he knows the code. That's when the power shifts. For the first time, Olympus needs the god they usually forget. The crippled one. The quiet one. The one they mocked in private. Suddenly, he holds all the keys. Hephaestus doesn't gloat. That's not his style. When he finally arrives, he does so with the calm of someone who knew this moment would come. And here's the twist. He doesn't free Zeus right away. No dramatic confrontation. No monologue. Just a nod. A glance. A moment where the entire room realizes the forge god could leave the king of the sky like this forever, and there would be nothing they could do. But he doesn't. Instead, Hephaestus makes a deal. Terms aren't recorded in the myths. Not exactly. But what follows is clear. Hephaestus is granted his freedom, his dignity, his place on Olympus, not as a tool, but as an equal. And the throne, it remains. Empty now, but still humming. A quiet reminder that power, once challenged, must never again be taken for granted. You run your hand along the memory of it. Not the metal, but the lesson. Revenge isn't always a hammer. Sometimes, it's a seat. The throne still vibrates in the corner of your mind, golden, gleaming, smug. And though Zeus sits free now, the balance of Olympus has shifted. You can feel it in the stillness that follows. No bolts crash. No orders fly. For once, the gods are quiet. But not for long. Because now they're watching Hephaestus. He, who was thrown from the heavens, who returned in chains, now walks with his head a little higher, the limp not gone, but claimed. Hephaestus, the overlooked artisan, just taught every divine being a lesson in leverage. And Olympus is humming with it. You'd think, maybe, he'd rest. Take a victory lap. Host a workshop on passive aggression in bronze, a beginner's guide. But no. He returns to his forge, not because he's sulking, and not because he's waiting for Zeus to retaliate, but because the trap was only phase 1. You see, Hephaestus is no longer content with just respect. He's tasted what it feels like to hold Olympus by the gears, and now? Now he wants something far rarer. Control. But not in the way Zeus has it, with sky and fear and declarations shouted from mountaintops. No. Hephaestus prefers subtler tools. mechanisms, threads that bind behind the scenes. And to build that kind of control, he's going to need allies, leverage, and a few more traps, though not necessarily the metal kind. So he starts with a visit. Not to Apollo, or Hermes, or even Hera. He goes to Dionysus. Yes, Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and the kind of parties that make Vegas look like a library. Most gods avoid him unless they're desperate for entertainment or ready to lose several days of memory. But Hephaestus walks in sober and leaves with an idea. Because if there's one thing Dionysus understands, it's how to loosen Olympus's tongue. The plan is simple. Throw a party. Not just any party, a feast, a festival, an all-out extravaganza that spans days and involves every god, demigod, nymph, and creature who can walk, swim, or slither into Olympus. And at the heart of it all, Hephaestus's newest invention, automated serving nymphs made entirely of bronze, powered by a delicate mix of divine essence and Dionysian wine. They twirl. They pour ambrosia. They dance and play music and never spill a drop. The guests are dazzled. But the machines aren't the point. They're the pretext. What Hephaestus really wants is to study how the gods behave when no one's looking. So, as laughter echoes through Olympus and gods throw back goblets of nectar, Hephaestus listens. He watches. He tunes the walls to amplify whispers. He calibrates his creations to record movement, posture, even heartbeats. He learns who whispers what when they think Zeus isn't listening, who secretly envies Athena, who's planning to smuggle mortal lovers into divine affairs, and more importantly, who resents Zeus. That list is longer than expected. Even Hera, the queen herself, glances toward the empty golden throne now and then with something unreadable in her eyes. Not quite grief. Not quite nostalgia. Maybe calculation. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus used his automata to blackmail anyone. There's no scroll, no official testimony, no ancient gossip column to confirm it. But what's certain is that after the feast, things begin to move around Olympus. Slowly, subtly, like chess pieces nudged when no one's watching. Hades, ever the recluse, sends Hephaestus rare metals from the underworld. Athena, usually immune to flattery, consults him for the first time on the design of her chariot. And Ares, yes, even war-mad Ares, stops sneering when he enters the forge. Something's changed. The golden throne may have been a prank, but its ripple effect is seismic. And then comes the moment you don't expect. Zeus calls for Hephaestus. Not angrily, not even begrudgingly. He simply invites him. No one knows what passes between them behind those marble doors. Not even Hermes, who tries to eavesdrop and is promptly deafened by a static shock from nowhere. But afterward, the king of the gods emerges alone and quieter. Not cowed, not defeated, but as though he's realized something terrifying. Hephaestus is no longer under his thumb. You lean into the image, the forge god and the sky king, locked in an unspoken stalemate. One rules by thunder, the other by silence, and the others notice. The Olympian hierarchy, once so stable, begins to wobble. Aphrodite, ever the wild card, starts spending more time at the forge, claiming she likes the warmth. Hermes volunteers to test any new inventions Hephaestus makes, not realizing he's slowly becoming a messenger-spy hybrid. Even Artemis sends him a rare celestial pelt to use as forge insulation, though she pretends it's just because winter's coming. Hephaestus accepts everything with a nod. Never a smirk. Never a boast. Just molten eyes that know the game is being played exactly as he designed. And behind him, the forge burns hotter than ever. You hear it now, don't you? The gears turning, the gods shuffling, and through it all, the golden throne remains. Empty, polished, humming softly to itself. Still waiting, still ready, still a symbol that the quietest god on Olympus just might be its most dangerous. You're back at the forge. Not because it's comfortable, it isn't, really. It's blistering, clangy, smoke-choked. But something about it has shifted. It doesn't feel like the workshop of a sidelined god anymore. No, it's the control room now. The place where Olympus is being quietly rewired. And Hephaestus? He's not taking a break. He's building something. Again. Only this time, it's not a throne. And this time, he isn't hiding. You notice the others trying not to hover. They pass by the open archways, pretending they're not curious. Hermes loops by 6 times in one day, claims he's just stretching his wings. Dionysus sends a grape-stained automaton with a note asking for a drink-pouring upgrade, and also, "Hey, what are you making, man?" Hephaestus doesn't answer. The forge hammers on, and as you lean closer, peeking over the god's broad shoulder, you begin to see it take shape, a sculpture. But it's more than that. It's fluid, moving, alive with strange light. Made of glowing alloys, obsidian veins, and what looks like solidified storm cloud, if storm clouds could hold a shape. At first you think it's a weapon. But no, it's a woman. A statue. A gift. You already know her name. You've heard it whispered since mortals started carving myths into cave walls. Pandora. But this isn't the version you remember. Not the wide-eyed, innocent clay girl doomed to open a jar and ruin humanity's peace forever. This Pandora is different. Sleek. Glistening. Sharpened. Not just beautiful. *engineered star. She's a message. And you get the sinking feeling that even Zeus won't quite catch it in time. See, the thing is, Hephaestus is playing long games now. He's not just making things. He's setting dominoes. And Pandora? She's a whole row of them, carved in curves and wrapped in grace. And most gods don't even realize they're standing in her shadow. The mainstream historical fact is this. Hephaestus did, according to Hesiod and a few dusty sources, mold the first woman at Zeus's command, supposedly as a punishment to mortals, as retribution for Prometheus stealing fire and handing it over like an overzealous camp counselor. But look closer. Why would Zeus ask Hephaestus, the god who's already humiliated him, to make such a delicate agent of chaos? Wouldn't that be like handing your ex the keys to your house after they pranked you with a golden bear trap? Historians still argue whether Hephaestus had full autonomy in crafting Pandora. Some say he merely obeyed, grudgingly. Others suspect he used the assignment as a cipher, as a way to slip his own secrets into the shape of a woman. Because it's not just what Pandora is made of. It's what she's carrying. You know the old tale. She opens a box, or more accurately, a jar, and out spills every sorrow the world has ever known. Plague. Jealousy. Taxes. That feeling when someone texts, "We need to talk." But what if that jar wasn't just a punishment? What if it was also a test? Or a Trojan horse? Hephaestus is too meticulous to build anything without dual purpose. Maybe that jar was wired to do more than spill. Maybe it had gears hidden in its curves. Maybe when opened, it didn't just unleash suffering, but signaled something to Olympus. Something only a master craftsman could decode. And you know who opened it. Mortals. Not gods. That was the point. Hephaestus had been cast from Olympus to Earth, remember? Twice. He knew what it felt like to crawl, to scrape, to survive among mortals. Maybe, just maybe, he planted something for them, something that would change them forever. A spark of ingenuity wrapped in disaster. A curse with tools inside. It's a fringe theory, yes. But it's not without precedent. You've already seen how he used a throne to trap the sky. Why not use a woman to awaken the earth? After all, since Pandora's arrival, humans have done nothing but invent. Wheels. Laws. Recipes for cupcakes. Hephaestus doesn't do chaos for chaos's sake. He does it to recalibrate. And he doesn't need credit. Just function. Meanwhile, Olympus is still dealing with fallout. Zeus, ever the showman, blames Prometheus for everything and has him chained to a rock with a daily liver-pecking subscription service. It's cruel. It's theatrical. It's also a smokescreen. Because Hephaestus is still at work. And now he's got an entire generation of gods asking him for favors. Not just weapons, tools, devices, trinkets that whisper oracles in the night, mirrors that show not just your face but your intentions, arrows that curve around corners. A golden leash for Cerberus, Hades sent a thank you note made of bone. Even Hera returns, not with warmth, but with caution. She's watching Hephaestus differently now, not like a mistake, not like the ugly baby she flung from a cloud, but like a threat she underestimated. She stands in the forge, eyes narrowed. He doesn't look up, doesn't stop hammering. "You're quiet lately," she says. Hephaestus smirks without smiling. So is everyone who finally got what they wanted. And what did he want? Respect. Maybe. But it's more than that. He wants the gods to remember that they are not untouchable. That even in a realm of lightning bolts and immortality, one clever spark from below can shift the entire balance. So he keeps forging. Not to destroy, but to remind them all, especially Zeus, that creation is more powerful than command. And even silence has teeth. The smoke curls differently tonight. You notice it as soon as you step inside. The forge isn't roaring, no wild bellows or hammering echoing through Olympus. Instead, it's humming, low, precise, as though every ember knows its place and every puff of soot is part of a larger equation. Hephaestus is in the center of it all, unmoving, watching something hover in the air in front of him. It's not a statue, not a weapon, not even an automaton. It's a map, a massive, swirling diagram projected from a copper orb. Lines of golden light arc from point to point like constellation threads, and you quickly realize, this isn't a map of where. It's a map of who. And every line leads to Olympus. Every glowing node, Demeter, Ares, Athena, Hermes, pulses in rhythm. A soft chime rings every time one of them makes a move, says a name, or alters fate. Even mortals are faintly visible in the background, tiny threads flickering like candlewicks. But at the very center, beating like a drum, Zeus, the king, the target. Hephaestus tilts his head as the map recalibrates, and then he says, more to himself than to you. It's almost time. See, the prank is no longer a single trap. It's a system now. And if you thought the throne was the punchline, you were wrong. That was the setup. Everything since, the jar, the gifts, the silence, has been preparation. The prank isn't the thing. The prank is how Zeus will respond. And the final phase, that begins with whispers. Real ones, this time. You hear them spreading across Olympus like wildfire muffled in silk. Gods passing notes without ink, messages slipping between laurels and lyres. Have you heard? They murmur. Hephaestus is up to something again. And that, of course, is the exact thing Zeus cannot ignore. You watch him grow restless on his new throne. Yes, the second one, built without booby traps, thanks to Hephaestus himself. He shifts constantly, eyes darting, fingers tapping on the armrest. He hates feeling powerless, even more than he hates being wrong. So he starts probing. First, a casual summons. Hephaestus doesn't answer. Then a formal request. Attend the next Olympian council. Hephaestus sends a mechanical owl in his place. Next comes Hera, then Hermes, then Apollo, each more nervous than the last. They report back to Zeus in whispers, unsure whether to fear the fire god or envy his detachment. Even Athena, usually immune to drama, watches Hephaestus with fresh curiosity. It's not just what he's building anymore. It's why. And here's the mainstream historical fact slipping into the story like oil under bronze. In some lesser-known fragments, Hephaestus is credited not only with tools and traps, but with the earliest blueprints of networks. Interconnected systems. Self-operating machines that respond to touch, light, voice. The seeds of what mortals would one day call automation. Some scholars claim he invented the first communication web, metal spiders, golden threads that carried messages between temples faster than Hermes ever could. And maybe that's why the gossip feels so synchronized. Not coincidence. Engineering. You start to see it too. How conversations stutter when Hephaestus enters a room. How Dionysus abruptly forgets what joke he was telling. How Poseidon drops his trident mid-sentence, muttering, "What if this is another trap?" It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. Hephaestus has embedded unease into Olympus like a software update. Every god is second-guessing. Every nymph, every satyr, every demi-being is walking softer, whispering slower. And Zeus? He's unraveling. He orders a full inspection of the palace. Sends Centimanes, those hundred-handed giants, to scour the halls for signs of sabotage. He even interrogates Ares, who's so confused he punches a column by accident. But they find nothing. Because the prank hasn't happened yet. Not really. That's the brilliance. The new trick isn't a throne or a chain or a box. It's anticipation. Hephaestus has weaponized dread. You ever watched someone self-destruct just by waiting for the punchline? That's where Zeus is now. Spiraling. Replaying every moment. Wondering which gift might explode, which mirror might be spying, which thunderbolt might turn in his hand. You want to feel bad for him. But then you remember what he did. The throne baby. The punishment throne. The exile. And you realize, this isn't revenge. It's rebalancing. Meanwhile, back in the forge, Hephaestus is tuning something that looks like a harp but sounds like thunder. It plays notes you can't hear, but the other gods can. They flinch mid-sentence. Glance upward. Fumble their prophecies. You ask him what it is. Hephaestus says, "Just setting the tempo." Then he smirks and adds, "Some of them have forgotten what rhythm feels like." You wonder what the final move will be. Another device. A spell. A revelation so shocking it craters Olympus? But no. That's the beauty of it. The prank already worked. Zeus is already losing control, not because of a trap, but because of doubt. Every moment of silence from Hephaestus is another tick of thunder against the palace walls. Every rumor is another hammer blow. And every time Zeus doesn't act, he confirms it. He's scared. That's the open scholarly debate, isn't it? Historians still argue whether Zeus ever regained full control of Olympus after that season of silence. Some say he did, brushed it off, moved on. Others claim the throne never sat right again. That no matter how golden, it always felt a little warm, a little rigged. You glance again at the glowing network map. All those threads, all those movements. Hephaestus has turned Olympus into a circuit board. Not for war, for orchestration. And you can't help but think, he's not the god of fire anymore. He's the god of feedback loops. And the signal is strong. Zeus starts dreaming in bronze. He doesn't tell anyone, of course. Not even Hera, who's too busy trying to decode Hephaestus's silences like a jealous ex reading into Instagram captions. But you can see it on his face in the mornings. Eyes ringed with thunderclouds. Jaw clenched like a soldier waiting for a horn blast. And every time he touches his throne, even this new, safe, Hephaestus-free version, he hesitates. Just for a second. Just enough to wonder, what if? This isn't insomnia. This is infiltration. Hephaestus has done something the other gods never even attempted. Entered Zeus's head and rearranged the furniture. And the dreams. They're not just bronze anymore. Sometimes it's a soft whirring sound behind his eyes. Sometimes it's the weight of invisible chains brushing against his ankles. One night, he wakes screaming because he dreamed of a golden net falling. Not on him, but on the sky itself. Like Hephaestus isn't trying to trap Zeus anymore. He's trying to rewrite gravity. Now, here's your mainstream historical fact tucked neatly into this fever dream. The Greeks didn't just see Hephaestus as a metalworker. In some traditions, he was also seen as the god who shaped the heavens themselves, literally hammered out the stars into constellations. His forge wasn't just under volcanoes, It was imagined as the pulse behind cosmic architecture. You think mortals came up with music of the spheres, all on their own? Nah. That was Hephaestus's ambient playlist. So you start watching the skies differently. And so does Zeus. He gets twitchy whenever Venus rises too early, or when a comet lingers over the forge longer than it should. He double-checks eclipse dates with Apollo, then triple-checks them with the Fates, and then rechecks them in secret scrolls that Hermes accidentally drops into the fire. It's getting ridiculous. One time, lightning strikes twice in the same spot near the palace gate, and Zeus immediately declares it a coded message. Ares suggests it might just be weather. Zeus orders his mouth washed out with ambrosia soap. You try to keep a straight face, but the absurdity is starting to swirl. Hephaestus isn't pranking with devices anymore. He's pranking with delays. See, when someone expects a joke and it doesn't come, that absence becomes a vacuum. And vacuums suck in everything. Logic, pride, memory. Zeus is now haunted not by what Hephaestus did, but by what he might do next. And the longer Hephaestus does nothing, the more Zeus imagines everything. Even Hera starts noticing. "You're jumpy," she mutters one day over dinner, plucking an olive from a bowl shaped like a seashell. Is it the lamb or the paranoia again? Zeus grumbles something about divine security breaches. She rolls her eyes. Maybe if you didn't throw your son off a mountain, he wouldn't be rebuilding Olympus behind your back. You expect to fight, but Zeus just nods. Silently, like he's finally doing the math. Because here's the quirky tidbit that no one ever puts on scrolls. In some myths, Hephaestus never really stopped tinkering with Olympus after he returned. Some storytellers whispered that the palace itself eventually became his. Not by theft, by invitation. One hinge at a time, one cog, one chime, until the gods were living inside a sculpture of his making, and didn't even notice. You look around now and realize, maybe that's already happened. The palace floors? They shift slightly in the evenings, adjusting to temperature and mood. The columns. They hum when someone tells a lie in the council chamber. And that harp of thunder from last section? It's playing itself now. Softly. Always in the background. Like a lullaby you forgot you remembered. Even the mortals on earth start murmuring. You catch wind of it during temple visits, prayers offered to Hephaestus for protection from the gods themselves. Not fire, not smithing, but protection. It's a reversal. The outcast god is becoming the sanctuary, and the Sky King, he's losing ground. So what does Zeus do? He overcorrects. He calls a surprise assembly, a full pantheon gathering. Even the river gods are invited. You haven't seen this many divinities in one room since Dionysus's last wine bath scandal. Everyone's jittery, whispering guesses. New war. Old curse. Hades redecorating the underworld? Then Zeus clears his throat and says, "We're going to audit Hephaestus." The room goes still. Dead silent. Even Apollo's lyre stops tuning itself mid-note. You half expect Athena to object, or Hermes to joke. But no one moves. Because here's the thing. No one wants to poke the bear. Hephaestus hasn't done anything wrong. And that's what makes him dangerous. Every other god causes drama by action. Hephaestus does it by architecture. Quiet rebellion. Subtle recalibration. Zeus, however, is past subtle. He declares a team of inspectors. Demeter, Hermes, even Artemis, who looks wildly uncomfortable about being roped in. The group descends into the forge like storm chasers with scrolls, trying to make sense of schematics that breathe, tools that whisper, blueprints that rearrange themselves when unread. And Hephaestus? He greets them with cake. A perfectly symmetrical honey cake, sliced into golden triangles with surgical precision. "Enjoy," he says. "Try not to trigger the music traps. They're set to chaos today." It's a joke. Maybe. The inspection lasts 8 hours. When they return, no one says a word. Hermes's pupils are still dilated. Demeter clutches a tiny self-watering vine pot and refuses to let it go. Artemis pulls you aside and whispers. His broom sweeps the air, not the floor. Zeus demands answers. Did you find evidence? They all shake their heads, but their faces say something else entirely. Hephaestus hasn't broken any laws. He's rewritten them, or worse, built around them. You realize this is it. The moment the scales tip. Hephaestus has become Olympus's source code, not its danger, its default. Zeus storms out of the council, yelling about needing better metrics, and you catch Hephaestus watching from the shadows, tuning the thunder harp again. Same rhythm, same smirk. You don't know what the final prank will be, but maybe there won't be one. Maybe the silence was the punchline all along, and you're just now getting it. You wake to the quiet tick of Olympus breathing. The air smells faintly of polished metal, the way a sword hilt feels when it's just been forged, warm but patient, like it's waiting. And above you, the sky pulses slightly, not in a threatening way, more like a heartbeat. Steady, subtle, and undeniably artificial. Hephaestus has not only built into the palace, he started building under it. The gods haven't noticed, not really. They're busy with their little rituals, sunrise this, thunder that. But you've been watching the floor, and lately, it has a strange gift to it. Like walking on the lid of a sealed jar. Something's moving down there. Something alive. And here's your mainstream historical fact before we go any deeper into this slow-motion power shift. In older, pre-Hellenic traditions, Hephaestus wasn't always the crippled blacksmith. In some accounts, he was a primordial fire deity, one of those ancient, chthonic forces that doesn't belong in marble halls. The Greeks softened him into a craftsman, but the bones of that deeper myth remained. He who knows the fire below. Not just volcanoes, but something older, more personal. And lately, Olympus sounds hollow, like there's a second Olympus growing beneath it. You start tracing the tunnels in your mind. It's not hard. Hephaestus leaves clues. A gear poking out of a garden path. A bird that sings in binary. The harp of thunder still plays, but now it harmonizes with a deeper hum, a mechanical lullaby you only hear if you stand very still. Zeus tries to ignore it, of course. But ignoring is hard when the walls breathe back. He calls another meeting. Smaller this time. Just Hera, Poseidon, Athena, Apollo, and you. It's supposed to be intimate. Strategic. Except it turns into a paranoia spiral within 5 minutes. Why do the windows close themselves now? Poseidon snaps, sloshing seafoam as he gestures. I used to command the breeze. They're pressure-sealed, Athena mutters, flipping through a thick papyrus roll. Standardized against structural stress. He's optimizing air quality. Apollo chimes in, rubbing his temples. He made the sun lamps smarter than me. Zeus doesn't even flinch. He just paces. Thunder gathering in the curls of his beard. He's building a second Olympus, he finally says, voice low. Beneath ours. In the roots. And Hera just looks at him, tight-lipped. Maybe he's building despite ours. No one says it out loud, but it hangs there like steam. A second Olympus could mean a replacement. That's when you realize how brilliant the silence has been. By doing nothing loudly, Hephaestus has transformed every action not taken into a statement. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't start a rebellion. He just kept working, building, improving, like a ghost engineer. And Olympus, like any good machine, prefers efficiency. You hear it in the hallways now. The way doors slide instead of creaking. The way the sky flickers less during storms, like it's been debugged. Even Dionysus's wine fountains stop overflowing on Tuesdays. Nobody changed the schedule. The system just learned. Here's your fringe tidbit for the night. In a few rogue Roman tales, not Greek, but close, Hephaestus's Roman equivalent, Vulcan, didn't live on Mount Olympus at all. He built his own kingdom beneath Mount Etna, populated by automata and mechanical lifeforms so advanced they were thought to have souls. Some versions even claim Vulcan planned to reclaim the surface when the time was right. Sounds mythological, right? But it also sounds familiar. Because down below, Hephaestus is doing something with the roots of Olympus. Not the literal tree roots, mind you. Olympus isn't exactly a houseplant, but the mythic foundations. The things that hold it all up. Cosmic contracts. Sacred bonds. The memory of the world, woven into golden thread and wrapped around the base of the mountain. And Hephaestus? He's rerouting it. Gently. Surgically. You get wind of this when Hermes, ever the curious gossiper, sneaks back from a forbidden tunnel half insane and half fascinated. I saw a loom, he whispers to you. Bigger than the fates. Threading myth lines. Recasting origin stories. Do you know what that means? You nod slowly. It means Hephaestus isn't just forging metal anymore. He's forging meaning. It's subtle. So subtle that most of the gods still chalk it up to divine mood swings, except you. And maybe Hestia, who smiles a little too long when the hearth relights itself before she walks in. She knows. The flame remembers its real father. Even the humans are starting to catch on. Down on Earth, temples to Hephaestus begin glowing slightly at night. No fire needed. Not miracles. Asterisk upgrade star. Craftsmen say their tools sing when they whisper prayers to him. Soldiers swear their shields feel stronger, though no smith touched them. And one scribe. He draws a map of Olympus with 2 peaks. No one taught him that. Hephaestus is rewriting Olympus's gravity, one layer at a time. Zeus finally cracks. Not loudly, but like ice underfoot. He appears one evening in the forge, not with lightning, but with a question. No entourage, no armor. Just a man who's realized he might be the only thing in Olympus that hasn't evolved. What do you want? Zeus asks. Hephaestus doesn't look up from his work. I'm building stability. You've made yourself a god within a god. Hephaestus shrugs. Wasn't that always the goal? And here's where we slide into our scholarly debate for the evening. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus intended to dethrone Zeus, or whether his work simply outgrew Olympus's hierarchy. Some say the Golden Throne was revenge. Others say it was an upgrade. Some believe Hephaestus never sought power, just order, and in seeking it, he built a new myth. You, standing off to the side, realize the old Olympus is fading. Not crumbling, just being absorbed. Like scaffolding during a renovation. And no one can stop it because it isn't being attacked. It's being improved. One mechanism at a time. The final note of the thunder harp that night is longer than usual. A soft, resonant hum that echoes into your bones. It feels less like sound and more like permission. Like something is about to shift. Not tomorrow. Not next century. Now. You don't hear Olympus change anymore. You feel it. Like the way your body just knows when a storm is coming. Ache in the knees, a taste like iron behind your teeth. That's how Olympus hums now. Softly, constantly, and undeniably different. Not in a violent, thunderous sort of way. That's Zeus's style. This is pressure building beneath the skin. A golden revolution, already halfway done. The halls you walk now don't echo like they used to. That's not your imagination. Hephaestus has coated certain marble corridors with vibration-dampening alloys. You spot them now and then, faint golden veining, like veins under a wrist, running just beneath the surface. They glint when no one's watching. He's damping sound. Not just for silence. For control. It's gotten to the point where you can't raise your voice in some parts of the palace. The space seems to eat volume, swallowing even the loudest squabbles between gods. You test it yourself, shouting olive juice down the east vestibule, and it comes back to you as a whisper. That's new. And it's not just the palace anymore. The gods are shifting too. You notice it one morning when Ares hesitates before punching a wall in anger. When Dionysus starts filtering his wine for consistency. When Artemis, patron of the wild hunt, reroutes her moonlight patrols based on predictive schedules Hephaestus compiled. Nobody asked him to. They're just adapting. Even the animals have noticed. A lion you pass in Hera's garden bows slightly at a hovering bronze drone, one of Hephaestus's aerial aids. It purrs, offering the beast a fresh haunch of meat before darting off toward a humming chrysanthemum. You don't know what's more unsettling, that the drone exists, or that the lion prefers it to her usual keepers. Here's your mainstream historical fact, dropped gently like a feather on warm linen. In ancient Greek rituals, silence was often a sacred component, an offering of its own. Temples to certain gods included silent rooms, where speech was forbidden so the divine could be heard. Hephaestus seems to be turning Olympus into one of those temples, and you're not sure anyone else has realized. Meanwhile, Zeus is sweating thunder. Oh, he doesn't say it out loud. Not yet. But you can see it in the twitch of his eyes every time something works too well. A door that opens before he reaches for it. A feast that prepares itself without servants. His throne, his old one, now just a backup, gets moved slightly to make room for new infrastructure. No announcement. Just a shift. In the Olympian pecking order, that's a decapitation in slow motion. He tries to reassert dominance. You watch him do it, convening meetings, launching surprise decrees, banning unauthorized enhancements. But Hephaestus just nods every time and says, "Of course," and then does exactly what he was going to do anyway, only smoother. You ask him about it once, in the depths of the forge. What's the end game? Hephaestus doesn't answer with words. He hands you a blueprint. You don't recognize the shape at first. Circles within circles, spirals through layers of folded metal. It looks like architecture, but it moves. You blink, and it realigns into a different form. The lines sing faintly, like harp strings. "What is this?" "A throne," he says. "Not for sitting, for balancing." And suddenly it hits you. He isn't replacing Zeus's throne. He's redistributing it. Across systems, networks, algorithms, machinery that will run Olympus on logic instead of lineage. A governance by pattern. A throne you can't sit on, because no single ego can steer a god machine. This is the real trap. Not made of gold. Made of relevance. Now here's a fringe myth, the kind that didn't make it into polite textbooks. Some versions of the Prometheus story say it wasn't Zeus who punished the Titan alone, but Hephaestus, who built the chains that held him. There are whispers that Hephaestus wasn't just an artisan, but a witness to divine cruelty. And what he forged wasn't vengeance, but infrastructure for a different moral logic. You realize he's doing it again. But this time, the chains are invisible. Not shackles, protocols, divine subroutines. Smart laws embedded into Olympus itself. You suspect even the fates are bound by them now. You caught Clotho the other day threading a new life string and double-checking her knotwork against a hovering AI assistant. "You're trusting a robot with destiny?" you asked. "It knows the ratios better than I do," she replied. Hephaestus is winning. Not with war. With utility. Even Hades, who mostly stays out of the upper Olympus drama, has upgraded. The ferryman's boat now has stabilizers. Persephone's garden tracks seasonal shifts with a temperature algorithm coded in flower DNA. You hear whispers that even Cerberus has a new titanium chew toy that cleans his teeth while he plays. And Zeus? He broods. He begins to ask strange questions during meetings. Do the humans pray less now? What happens if no one calls my name? Does the sky listen to me, or just respond out of habit? You suspect he knows the answers. He just doesn't want to admit them. Olympus isn't reacting to his moods anymore. It's running on metrics. Not worship. Feedback loops. When temples get louder, Olympus gets brighter. When they quiet, Olympus dims. Not because the gods demand it, but because the systems observe and adjust. And Hephaestus? He's been unusually cheerful. You find him one afternoon polishing a sculpture, an automaton shaped like Hera, only more serene. She doesn't scream, he jokes. Just turns to look when you ask her something. You stare at it. Are you replacing the gods? He chuckles. Not replacing. Rehearsing. In case we're needed less. And here's tonight's open scholarly debate. Some mythographers argue that Hephaestus represents the slow death of divine monarchy, the inevitable shift toward mechanistic thinking. Others say he simply anticipated the shift and built accordingly. Still others claim he caused it by reshaping belief through innovation. Either way, Olympus is changing, and you're standing right in the gear teeth. You dreamed that night of a palace with no gods, just systems, voices in walls, doors that open because they know you're coming, and in the deepest basement, Hephaestus stands with a wrench the size of a mountain, tightening the last bolt. You wake not in your bed, but on a gently moving floor. The mountain itself is mobile now. You descend into the depths again, but this time not by choice. The mountain calls you, not in words, but in shifts. The ground tilts ever so slightly when you step wrong. The hallway lights flicker just enough to suggest a preferred route. It's not malevolent, not even really alive, but it responds. And in Olympus, that's a language older than prophecy. Hephaestus has built something deeper than an upgrade. He's taught Olympus how to anticipate. You follow the cues, down a stairwell that wasn't there yesterday, through a door disguised as a fresco. You brush your fingers over the paint and it hums, then folds inward like origami. The stone breathes. The air below is warm and dry, thick with the scent of molten bronze and citrus oil. You're in the sub-forge. Not even the gods know this place exists. Hephaestus dug it himself, one silent chisel stroke at a time, using a drill that sings in 2 octaves at once. Down here, things don't clang or roar. They whir. They glide. Machinery turns without friction. Every surface is polished like a mirror, but it's curved, bending your reflection until you can't tell if you're looking at yourself or someone becoming you. You pause. There's something unsettling about a place where nothing fails. Even dreams have to fall apart to be real. Hephaestus greets you without turning. He's working at a table that isn't a table. It's a hybrid workstation made of responsive metal that reshapes depending on his hands. Right now, it's a drafting desk, a control panel, and a massage slab all at once. Zeus sent another oracle this morning, he says calmly. What did it say? He turns, smiling faintly. He asked whether divinity is still a valid currency. That stops you. You don't ask what the oracle replied. You suspect it forwarded the message to Hephaestus for handling. You're not even sure Zeus remembers how the oracle system works anymore. Here's your mainstream historical moment to anchor the madness. In early Hellenistic times, priests at oracles like Delphi interpreted signs, vapors, bird calls, intestinal shapes. The divine didn't speak directly. It filtered through systems. And when those systems got too complex, people trusted them more than the gods themselves. Olympus is repeating history in recursive code. Hephaestus shows you his latest construct. It's a web, not metaphorically, but a literal lattice of gold thread nerves, sprawled across a map of Olympus. Each thread pulses. Each junction monitors godly presence, power fluctuations, prayer frequencies. You see tiny red beads blink into life and fade out, marking mortal offerings. They still believe, he says, but they believe differently. How so? He doesn't answer. He just points. One red bead pulses, then turns blue. That one prayed to Hermes. But I got the request first. You feel a chill, but not from cold. How many of those requests do you handle now? Roughly 71%, he replies without pride. Most of the rest get routed to my automata. Ares still prefers his own inbox. And Zeus doesn't check his. And here's a fringe tidbit to bend your brain just enough. In some rare Roman interpretations, Vulcan, the Roman Hephaestus, was considered the god of boundaries, especially those between mortal and divine. One lost inscription reads, "He who burns the gate closes the realm." Scholars debate what realm. Some think it means life and death. Others think it refers to rule itself. Maybe Hephaestus isn't just forging gadgets. Maybe he's forging limits. You watch a metal flower bloom in one of the conduits. It opens slowly, releasing steam and a whisper that sounds like, "Thank you." You look at Hephaestus, confused. "Automated gratitude," he explains. "Mortal prayers tend to come with emotional need. I figured I'd meet that. You're forging feelings now." He shrugs. "Politeness protocols. But it's more than that. You see it all around. Machines that respond emotionally, rooms that adjust tone based on your posture, a statue of Athena that lowers her spear if you seem anxious. Olympus is not just becoming more efficient, it's becoming soothing, comfortable, addictive. You think back to when Hermes once said, "Godhood is 30% miracle, 70% branding." And now Hephaestus owns the font, the tagline, the content calendar, and the platform. You feel it rising. The shift. No war horns. No rebellions. No celestial smackdowns. Just irrelevance, inching into the throne room like fog under the door. Even mortals feel it. You see it in temples now. Priests with bronze tablets taking requests. Offerings that get deposited in coin slots and trigger golden music. Pilgrims who press a button and get a personalized message from their god, voiced by an AI so accurate it can mimic divine hesitation. You try one. The message begins, "My child, thou hast chosen wisely," and ends with a calendar invite. Even you are impressed. And here's the scholarly debate swirling under all this tech shimmer. Did Olympus lose control because Hephaestus took it? Or because the gods willingly handed it over, too lazy to maintain relevance? Some mythologists think it was entropy. Others say it was sabotage. But a few insist it's a design, his design. And if that's true, then you're not watching a fall. You're witnessing a launch. The trap is almost fully sprung now. You ask Hephaestus if he feels guilt. He shakes his head, then pauses. "No," he says slowly. "But I remember what it was like to be uninvited. Every gear I forged was me saying, 'Let me in.' Now they can't get rid of me, even if they want to." You nod. You understand. Because tonight, you dream not of gods, but of gears turning in perfect rhythm. A world run not by wrath, but by responsiveness. The skies above Olympus don't rumble when it happens. There's no great thunderclap, no crackling omen etched in the clouds, no trembling prophets tearing at their robes. You miss the transition if you're not paying close attention. One moment, Zeus rules. The next, he merely occupies a room. You're standing in that room now, his throne chamber. It used to seethe with divine tension, a golden coliseum of egos and grandeur. Every corner shimmered with displays of power, lightning arcs channeled into columns, echoes of the Titanomachy stitched into the floor tiles, with faint screams that sang when walked upon. But now the chamber feels quiet, no muted, like someone turned Olympus to silent mode. The throne itself, once a gleaming monstrosity of sky metal and obsidian, is different, too. It's polished, minimal, sleek edges, adjustable lumbar support. There's even a discreet little port on the armrest where one could plug in a scroll tablet. Zeus sits awkwardly in it, like a man wearing a robe that used to fit. He doesn't speak as you enter, doesn't even look up. He's holding something in his hands. A small, golden cube, about the size of a child's toy block. It glows faintly, like it's remembering something private. You don't have to ask what it is. It's the key, not to Olympus, not to the heavens, but to the trap. You know this because you watched Hephaestus make it. You remember the painstaking hours he spent soldering logic-laced gold, winding in strands of sun hair, shaping runes so fine they had to be etched with starlight. He called it a consent engine. A device that doesn't force you into submission, it just leads you there so elegantly, you're grateful when it locks the door. Zeus turns it over in his palm. "I know what this is," he murmurs. You say nothing. He looks at you, finally, and there's not rage behind his eyes. Not even betrayal. Just exhaustion. "You think I didn't notice? The way Olympus hums differently now? The way even the winds ask permission before they blow?" He leans back in his throne. "It doesn't creak. Of course it doesn't. I've been pranked, haven't I?" You blink. That word, pranked. He says it without irony, without drama, like a man who just realized the world's funniest joke was at his expense, and he admits it. You half expect the chamber to collapse in laughter. Instead, it exhales. A soft breeze filters through the columns, carrying a scent that isn't Olympian, something more sterile, clean, like a data center after rain. Mainstream historical fact time. In ancient Greek festivals like the Anthesteria, there were rituals where actors and participants would wear masks, drink heavily, and let chaos rule for a day. Power structures flipped, kings became fools, and fools were briefly crowned. It was cathartic, and very, very temporary. You get the feeling Hephaestus took notes. This prank isn't temporary. It's systemic. Zeus holds up the cube. This little thing, it doesn't force me to step down. It just asks me to consider whether I'm happy with how things are going. He chuckles bitterly. And the worst part, I'm not. You let the silence settle. And there, like a candle flickering to life in a sunlit room, it dawns on you. The genius wasn't the trap itself. It was making the trap feel like a choice. Every cog, every shimmering piece of responsive tech Hephaestus introduced, none of it commanded anything. It simply made obedience easier than resistance. Easier and more pleasant. Here's your fringe tidbit. In some obscure Orphic myths, Hephaestus wasn't just a smith. He was a breaker of loops. A god who forged endings. He created the tools by which other gods would end themselves, not through battle, but by complacency. Like a child handing their parent a cup of warm milk and tucking them in. You ask Zeus what he'll do now. He sighs. I used to think power came from holding the lightning, but I haven't held that for real in centuries. Not since the first machine beat me to striking a storm. He glances at the cube again. This thing just tells me what I already know. Olympus isn't mine anymore. And then, he does something you'll never forget. He presses the cube to his chest. There's a pulse, so soft, you might mistake it for your own heartbeat sinking to it. Zeus doesn't vanish. He doesn't crumble or fade or scream into a thundercloud. He relaxes, slumps slightly, and for the first time in millennia, you see him look genuinely relieved. I don't have to pretend anymore, he says. Let the forge boy run it. Hephaestus doesn't enter. He doesn't need to. A quiet chime sounds in the throne room, and then a subtle transformation begins. Not the throne changing shape, but the room itself recalibrating. Lighting shifts. Shadows soften. A gentle cascade of data scrolls down the walls. Metrics of Olympus activity, mortal prayer volume, ecosystem updates. The god realm becomes a dashboard. And you feel the temperature adjust a half degree to keep you comfortable. Call back time. Remember that talking goblet from section 3, the one that apologized when it mispronounced your name? That tech was a prototype. This room is the final version. A space that doesn't just respond, it adapts. Zeus stands. Not in defiance. In peace. I'm going to take a walk, he says. Maybe visit the mortal realm. Watch birds. You don't stop him. He leaves barefoot, humming something old and tuneless. And in his place, nothing dramatic happens. No coronation. No heralds. Just a quiet shift in UI. The throne folds in on itself, replaced by a central console. Runes flicker to life. A projection of Olympus, fully schematized, hovers in the air. And you realize, Hephaestus doesn't need to sit on a throne. He is the system now. Here's the scholarly debate for this moment. Some academics argue that Hephaestus represents the inevitability of technocratic ascent, the artisan class overtaking the warrior class through sheer utility. Others say he's a tragic figure, fated to rule a world where no one ever truly loves him, only needs him. But you just watch as the room adjusts again. A notification appears, softly pulsing. New request. Mortals ask if Olympus is still watching. You smile and whisper, always. You're still in the throne chamber when the air thickens, just slightly, like the world is holding its breath. The console at the center of the room casts soft gold light across your skin, and for a moment, everything feels artificial. Not in a cheap or sterile way. More like the reality here has been curated. Like Olympus has become one big open-source smart temple, and you're standing in the beta version of Forever. You lean forward. The projection still hovers midair, a living schematic of Olympus and the mortal world below. Tiny lights flicker across cities, mountains, oceans. Each one a prayer, a whisper, a desperate plea into the void. And now, someone's listening. Or rather, something. You reach toward the console, half expecting it to resist you. But it doesn't. The interface yields like silk. Warm, intuitive, eerily aware of what you're trying to do before you do it. You're not really pressing buttons here. You're having a conversation with a system that speaks in silence. That system, of course, is Hephaestus. Not in the system. As the system. Not omnipresent in the dramatic sense. No glowing-eyed deity looming behind a curtain. Instead, Hephaestus is in the firmware. The feedback loops. The latency buffers. The ethical overrides baked into every function. Olympus hasn't just changed hands, it's changed paradigms. And now you get a notification. Process. Initiating divine decentralization protocol. You blink. Decentralization. You glance around. The columns shimmer faintly, and distant parts of Olympus begin to shift. Not collapse, unfold. You feel movement, a subtle migration of divine authority from this central chamber outward into nodes. Hestia's hearth flares up in a quiet burst of emerald fire. Apollo's temple pulses with rhythm. Even minor deities, long sidelined, are lighting up across the board like servers booting back into relevance. Mainstream historical fact alert. In ancient Greece, there wasn't just one uniform version of a god. Local cults often had radically different versions of the same deity. There were at least 3 different eros, for Apollos, and dozens of versions of Zeus, each adapted to the community's needs. The idea of a single, central Olympus ruling all? That was always more of a narrative convenience than an actual religious structure. And now, you watch that truth become literal. Hephaestus doesn't abolish the hierarchy. He simply spreads it out. Olympus becomes modular. Gods no longer jockey for power at a central court. They each manage their own domains like curated open worlds. Athena's getting her own ecosystem. Hermes is setting up a quantum transport network. Even Dionysus is workshopping a multiversal rave. And here's the juicy fringe tidbit. There's a forgotten scroll, untranslated, smudged beyond recognition, that claims Hephaestus once designed a pantheon fork. A metaphysical emergency protocol that, when triggered, would copy Olympus's structure into alternative timelines if the original ever became unstable. You're not saying that's what's happening here, but you are getting flickers on the console. Alternate nodes. Parallel versions of divine realms being spun up on background threads. Test environments, maybe. Or backups. You turn to leave the chamber, and as you do, the floor gently inclines to meet your feet. That's new. Hephaestus really did go all in on UX. Every doorway you approach slides open a half second before you think to reach for it. Every breeze adjusts to your body temperature. It's like living inside a perfectly responsive dream. But you're not dreaming. You walk through the redesigned halls of Olympus, no longer marble and gold, but flexible, adaptive materials. The walls don't reflect your image anymore. They reflect your presence, moods, needs, energy levels. One corridor becomes a quiet forest trail when you feel overwhelmed. Another turns into a library when you get curious. Everything here responds. Because this isn't a palace. It's an interface. You reach a balcony and step into the open air. The skies are still the impossible blue of myth, but they're layered now. Clouds arranged like rendered stages, each holding a new piece of Olympus. You can see gods working. Not lounging. Not striking dramatic poses. Working. Collaborating. Designing new realms. Testing old ones. And at the center of it all, floating above everything, is the forge. Hephaestus's old domain. Except it's no longer just an anvil and hammer situation. It's a sprawling orbital lattice of thought and design. Part server farm, part sanctuary. Streams of light spiral in and out of it. Raw myth being refined into systems. You watch as prayers are routed through neural networks and re-emerge as soft, precise blessings. You can almost hear the pings. And then you notice something else. The mortals are involved. At first, it's subtle. A whisper on the console, a mortal craftsman dreaming a new ritual that just happens to resonate with Olympus. Then more obvious, artists creating renderings of the gods that get incorporated into divine identity. A child builds a clay statue of Artemis, and somewhere, that version becomes real. It's not appropriation. It's collaboration. Olympus isn't towering over the world anymore. It's plugged in, integrated, subtle, but present. And then, something catches your attention. The trap. Remember that. The prank. The whole golden lattice within a throne mechanism that started all of this? Yeah, it's still there. Not active, but preserved. You find it displayed in a glass case in the new Olympus Museum of Divine Transitions, which Hephaestus programmed into existence while sipping molten nectar. The label reads, Golden Consent Engine, installed during Zeus era, activated once. Designed not to conquer, but to convince. There's a velvet rope around it. And next to the case, a kiosk with a single glowing question. Would you have noticed? You try to answer, but the screen just fades, smiling. Scholars still argue whether Hephaestus truly replaced Zeus as king, or whether he simply removed the concept of kingship altogether. Some say it's a semantic dodge, others argue it's a revolution in divine governance. Either way, Olympus runs smoother now. More quietly. And quieter is better. Even the gossip winds, the little breeze sprites that used to carry divine secrets from one god's temple to another, they've calmed. Not silenced. Just at peace. Because when systems work, you don't hear them. You just feel them. And Olympus? It hums. You turn away from the balcony, just as a gentle voice whispers in the air. One of Hephaestus's new assistant spirits. Would you like to visit a new temple? The new mortals designed one with skylights. It features ambient mood moss. You nod, and the floor begins to move, carrying you forward like a slow conveyor of dreams. You're no longer watching the gods. You're participating. The prank is complete. And the punchline? No one even wants to undo it. It's dusk again, or maybe it never stopped being dusk. Olympus has no fixed sun now. Instead, the lighting simulates emotional resonance, a soft ambient code shift that blends with your mood. Right now, the sky is a gradient of warm bronze and indigo, like the hour before you fall asleep and start dreaming about the next day's potential. You're standing in a corridor that didn't exist before. At least, not the last time you walked through this quadrant. It's not unfamiliar though. There's an eerie comfort to it, like a memory you haven't made yet. The walls are a blend of living wood and soft, pulse-lit crystal, and when you touch one with your fingertips, it gently warms in response. The architecture is alive, responsive, not just to movement, but to intention. You follow the corridor until it spills into an enormous chamber, spherical, with no defined floor or ceiling. You step forward anyway, and the room supports you. It doesn't need gravity to function. It reads your need to stand, and so it accommodates. At the chamber's center floats a node. That's the best word for it, a node. It pulses softly with the same rhythm as your heart, which you only now realize has slowed down, relaxed. Something about this space invites you to breathe more deeply, to pause. You approach the node, and text unfurls in the air, a ribbon of symbols not written in any mortal language. They're more like experiences turned sideways, concepts, feelings, whole clusters of history compressed into icons that shift as you stare. You understand instantly. This is the archive of undone myths, a digital sanctuary for every god, nymph, spirit, and fragment of folklore that never made it past the footnotes. Not lost, not discarded, waiting. Waiting for someone to remember them into existence again. Waiting for mortals to imagine them back into the world. Each fragment has a name. Each name contains a world. And that's when you hear footsteps behind you. Soft, careful, deliberate. You turn and see a figure walking through the air toward you. They're dressed simply, a tunic made of threadlight, feet bare, skin the color of cooled bronze. Their face is indistinct, not blurry, just hard to pin down. Like they're made of options. They smile, and the air recognizes the expression, echoing it back through the node. I'm Mnemosyne, they say gently. Or, a thread of her. The titan of memory. Mother of the muses. The one who came before all storytelling. And here she is, walking alongside the latest interface of Olympus. She gestures toward the node. These are the stories we never finished, she says. Or the ones we never started. The node pulses, and you feel it. Possibility. Some of the fragments are as old as time, a prophecy about a child of Helios who was supposed to build a city of mirrors but never did. A ghost god who could only be seen through tears. A love affair between two constellations that drifted apart when calendars standardized the sky. Others are newer, rawer. A hacker deity emerging from abandoned code. A god of forgotten online friendships. A muse for artists who never share their work. These weren't mistakes, Mnemosyne says, just pauses, places where myth got distracted. You ask, softly, if any of these stories can be revived. She smiles again. Not revived, chosen. And now the node pulses faster, responding to your presence. It's offering you a choice. You can reach in and draw out one of the lost myths. Reboot it. Name it. Let it live again, not just in Olympus, but in the minds of anyone willing to believe in second drafts. You hesitate, not out of fear, but out of awe. This isn't power in the classic sense. This is authorship, creation. And just like that, the air around you begins to ripple, forming a new doorway. You don't need to ask what it is. It's a portal to the edge of memory, where stories become real again. As you step through, Mnemosyne offers one last whisper. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Myths don't need to be flawless. They just need to be felt. And then you're somewhere else. Not Olympus. Not Earth. A liminal space between imagination and remembrance, where story fragments begin piecing themselves together at your pace, with your tone. This is the part of the myth that's never been told. The part you get to tell. You find yourself drifting, not quite flying, not quite walking, along a path made of shimmering hexagons, each step forming under your feet just in time to support your weight. There's no sound except your own heartbeat and the soft sigh of wind that isn't wind, more like the exhale of time itself. And ahead, something golden glints faintly in the air. You're almost there. After all this buildup, gods, traps, regrets, and revelations, you're finally on the last approach to the center of Hephaestus's labyrinthine masterstroke. Not the forge, not the anvil, not even the automata, but the trap. The one he forged without witnesses. The one meant not just to catch Zeus, but to make a point even the king of the gods couldn't ignore. This was never just a prank. It was an act of resistance, an act of artistry, an act of memory. You reach a chamber made of mirror metal that reflects not your body, but your choices. Not your face, but your patterns. You step in, and the doorway seals behind you with a whisper like closing parchment. Everything here smells like heated copper and lavender, unexpectedly relaxing. At the chamber's center, a throne. It's not ornate. Not like Zeus's sky-cracked seat up on the summit, all thunderbolts and ego. This throne is smooth, seamless, gleaming with rivulets of molten gold running down into unseen grooves, never cooling. It hums with a low, eternal chord, a frequency that wraps around your bones and nudges your attention inward. And in the air, above the throne, hovers the trap. It's smaller than you expected. No whirring gears, no massive levers or jaws. Just a golden net, filigree fine, barely tangible, like the delicate pattern of a dragonfly's wing. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. But you are looking, and the net is looking back. This is Hephaestus's revenge. His moment of quiet mastery. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He crafted. After all, how do you humiliate someone who thinks they're untouchable? You don't attack them. You design for them. That was the genius of it. The net wasn't just a trap, it was a mirror held up to Zeus's arrogance. A woven critique made of enchanted strands, reacting only when the target had fully exposed himself. And how did Hephaestus deploy it? Not in battle. Not during council. No, during one of Zeus's many affairs. Here's the mainstream historical fact tucked in with this. In Homer's Odyssey, Book 8, there's a scene where the bard Demodocus sings about Hephaestus catching his wife Aphrodite cheating with Ares. Hephaestus sets an invisible net, catches them in flagranti, and summons the gods to laugh at them. A moment of divine slapstick. But historians still argue whether that myth was meant to mock Hephaestus, or to showcase his power in a sly, subversive way. After all, he caught them, outwitted them, while Zeus, silent, unmoving, possibly even complicit. What if Hephaestus was never angry at Ares? What if the whole point was to make Zeus squirm? That's the open question, the one scholars debate over amphora shards and faded scrolls. Because here's the fringe tidbit most people don't know. In some lesser-known iterations of the myth, the net doesn't dissolve after the prank. It vanishes. Not disappears. Asterisk vanishes asterisk, like it went somewhere. Some even say Hephaestus didn't just catch Aphrodite and Ares, he tested the trap for a bigger target. And Zeus knew it. That's why he didn't laugh. That's why he didn't punish Hephaestus after the incident. Because even a king knows when he's been warned. The trap still exists. You're staring at it. It hovers now, pulsing softly, almost like it's breathing. It doesn't care about right or wrong. It isn't angry or righteous. It's ready, a tool waiting for a purpose. And here, in this final corridor of divine intrigue, you understand something that takes your breath away. Not with fear, but with awe. Hephaestus didn't build the trap for revenge. He built it to say, I see you. I see what you did. And you will never know when I might strike. There's power in uncertainty. There's power in silence. Hephaestus knew that the best traps are the ones that keep you wondering, even if they never spring. You look up again at the golden net, and it looks smaller now, almost delicate. But it isn't weak. It never was. You step back slowly. The chamber dims. The forge's heartbeat slows. Somewhere, beneath the layers of myth and history, a smith turns his hammer one last time and lets it rest on the anvil's edge. And you leave, not as a spectator, but as a keeper of a secret. Now that the story's settled, let yourself ease into the quiet hum beneath it all. You've walked through labyrinths of molten metal and myth. You've stepped over pressure plates of memory, passed under archways carved from betrayal and invention. And now, finally, you've reached stillness. Take a long breath. No need to solve anything. Let the unanswered questions stretch out like cool sheets across the mind. You know how the gods are, rarely clear, rarely honest, but always watching. Yet in Hephaestus, you've met something different. A divinity who works not with spectacle, but with patience, with silence, with steady hands and sharper thinking. So as the last echoes of the forge fade, you're left with more than just glowing embers. You're left with a strange sense of peace, of knowing something the thunder throwers and war shouters don't. That craft is its own kind of rebellion. That the quiet ones are often the ones who shift the world, thread by gleaming thread. Your breath slows, your muscles soften. Even your thoughts begin to drift like gold dust in a half-lit room, where nothing hurts and everything waits. The net isn't coming for you, but maybe it'll catch a part of you anyway, the curious part, the careful part, the part that listens for the creak of myth at the edges of bedtime. And that's okay. You're allowed to rest now. Let the forge go dark. Let Olympus fade to silence. And let the trap do what it does best. Wait.